Good evening. I'm Robert from Simpson Housing. This is Kayla and Jeff. They work with me at our shelter. I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank those of you who gathered here tonight, the 170 so of you that participated in the march with us.
Just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped organize this event and plan it.
And I just want to say thanks to everyone that prepared the delicious meal that they're going to serve after the service.
We gather here tonight to remember 266 folks in our community that have been lost in the last year. Folks from here in Hennepin County to St. Paul, up to Duluth, and down to Mankato. Folks whose joys and whose struggles we remember in their lives, and folks whose dignity we uphold after their deaths. I'd like to welcome Reverend Dwayne to the stage to say a few words.
Good evening. I am Reverend Dr. Dwayne Davis, lead minister of Plymouth Congregational Church, and it is indeed my honor to welcome you to this 40th annual Minnesota Homeless Memorial and March. Will you please do me a favor and turn to someone sitting next to you and say, thank you for being here. I wanted you to do that because when we get into the heart of the matter, the reason for which we have gathered, you're going to need the strength of your neighbor to hold on to. And the reason I tell you that, because it's a personal thing, I don't care how many times I see those placards or these phalanx of candles, I still lose my breath. And I still choke back tears. As you already know, this annual gathering gives us an opportunity to remember, to honor the lives, and to say the names of those who died while homeless in Minnesota, including those whose names we do not know. But I also have to say, and I will take the privilege to say it and take whatever heat comes with it, that it is also a tragedy in the height of injustice that we do gather in this way. It is a tragedy that we have to set aside a service like this. It should not be so. And we do it because our governments at every level, everybody, there's enough blame to go around, but governments at every level will not muster the will and will not demonstrate the courage to make sure that everyone has a safe, stable home. And too many people, including at least 266 people this year in Minnesota, are left vulnerable to the dangers of living without shelter. And so I am proud to welcome you here. I am proud to join with you tonight. Plymouth Congregational Church is so proud to stand with all of you in solidarity and advocacy tonight. We mourn with you and we fight by your side, trying to make the change we know is needed and actually we know is possible. So on behalf of the members, leaders, staff, and clergy of Plymouth Congregational Church, we welcome you, our beloved community, for this night. And yes, I am grateful that you are here, even if I am so sad that you have to be. I want to give a special thank you to some people. I know it's probably dangerous to name names, but certainly in our Plymouth family, I would like to give thanks to people who've gone beyond the call of duty to make sure that we can do this work and make sure that we can provide this space and time and opportunity for you. E.J. Kelly, the chair of our Board of Outreach, Katie Dillon, the chair of our Housing Justice Committee, Corey Bordeaux and Slats Tool, who are doing the sound and all of that, Malcolm Williams and his security team, Thank them for making sure that we can do this and we can get warm and we can get you in here. They went beyond the call of duty. But I also want to thank all of you who marched. Again, there are many times throughout this service that I am caught short and I lose my breath. And to see so many of you who marched in that cold, walking through that door, your commitment, your support is just so overwhelming and inspiring. I do and imagine just so glad to see one of our leaders whose commitment has been shown time and again, our dear Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Peggy Flanagan. Thank you for joining us again in this service. And finally, I'd like to thank all of the partners who make this possible: Simpson Housing Services, the Bridge for Youth, CHUM, Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless, Align Minneapolis, and Peace House County. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, please join me in our special reading, our responsive reading that is in your bulletin. It is a powerful statement about the reason that we gather and the purpose and people we honor. In solidarity with all who sleep outside, who sleep in shelters, to show they are us and we are them. To remember, to mourn, to celebrate, to offer our support, to ensure that no life, no death, no passing from here to the beyond is unseen or unacknowledged. We speak the names of those who are no longer with us, names of people we know, names of strangers, names of relatives, names of ones whose names are not known. We share memories of struggles, tears, battles lost, memories that haunt us and fuel our work. We share memories of good times, laughter, successes, memories that heal and keep us warm. Buoyed by embracing loss and sharing comfort, we leave with full hearts until we gather again. We indeed carry their names. And finally, so I can get out of your way, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening. Mary Galini is a single adults program manager at Simpson Housing Services. And she has worked in shelter and housing since 1988 in Minneapolis. And I had the pleasure of having a conversation with her earlier today about when they were doing this work without this much support and attention, when they had to fight for every little inch of help that they can give to people who are homeless, fighting the city, the county, the state, trying to build shelters in places where people were very clear, not in my backyard. She saw all of it. Mary drew on her deep commitment to partner with people experiencing homelessness and her extensive network of contacts to manage Simpson's initial Housing First program in 2005. And she attributes success throughout her career to building relationships with people experiencing homelessness, housing, and shelter providers and property owners and managers. In the mid-90s, she and other staff members at local housing providers were instrumental in adding a silent march to the annual Homeless Memorial. So you have someone with us tonight who was there at the beginning. And she and her family have not missed a single memorial march in 30 years. But I also just want to leave you, before I invite her up, with something from her own words. I might even be saying something she might say tonight, but when I read what she said, I think she was being interviewed. And it touched me because it was clear and precise about what this works mean. Mary said, and it touches me at my core, we don't give up on people. We really believe that housing is a right. When people have a history of trauma and many struggles, we're going to keep on working with them, even if it takes 3 or 4 more tries, so they will have safe, stable homes and the support they need to succeed. Wow, that is a powerful witness to the work. And so please join me in welcoming Mary Galini to speak to us.
Well, hi everyone. It's really good to be with you all, and I'm very honored to have been asked to share this reflection tonight. So many of you are people I've worked alongside, some of you, well, one of you for just a couple days, and some of you for many decades. In a lot of ways, the journey of my career kind of parallels the progress that we've made as a community. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the steps I took along the way. I started in 1988 working as an advocate at St. Stephen's Shelter. In those days, we opened the doors at 6 o'clock. We did a nightly lottery to fill any empty beds that we might have, and those beds were mats on the floor. We had amazing volunteers who stayed overnight to keep the shelter open. And everyone was out and on their way by 7. It's a little bit of a miracle that it worked, but it seemed to work for many years. As we moved into the 90s, we started noticing that we're turning away more and more people, and we had an amazing staff, but we were struggling really with what to do. We were a little more isolated in those days, I'd say, and trying to figure out what to do. One of my mentors, David Kroll, suggested that instead of chaining ourselves to City Hall doors, that maybe we just simply meet some other providers. So this gathering eventually became the Shelter Providers Action Association. And at that moment, we were small, but we grew to the point where we had just about every service provider in the area with us. That included Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, People Incorporated, Legal Aid. Our goal was to provide dignified shelter for all. We're obviously still working on that, but we did make some important and tangible changes in our time together and planted the seeds for some of the changes that we see now. So in the next couple years, we're excited that both Agate and Simpson are going to open new shelter facilities. These shelter... At Simpson, I know we're going to have a supportive housing on the upper levels, and the shelter itself is going to be bright, and we're going to do things like have flexible sleeping spaces that would be dignified for all people, regardless, for example, of what gender they identified as, or for couples. From that point on, I knew collaboration and shared wisdom was the norm. We stopped feeling isolated, and we worked together. Fast forwarding another 10 years, we did another, or in my career at least, we leapt another leap forward. And that's when, at Simpson, we were noticing that people would leave the shelter, get housing, and then be right back, sometimes just in a couple months. And we thought, well, maybe we should get somebody to take the job of being a bridge between that shelter and that housing. So I got that job, which was great. And what was even better is I found out later that we had 25 Minnesota housing rental subsidies. So we took 25 of the longest term homeless people in the couple shelters that we were working from and found housing for them by driving up and down streets and looking at for rent signs and convincing landlords that they wanted to do this. That was when I took my first big step into housing first, what I consider the miracle of housing first. Instead of expecting people to be ready for housing and to be sober and on medication, we just believe that housing itself is healing and that housing is the ground floor of healthcare. The people that we chose to be in that program did amazing. It was really a remarkable amount of success. I often said that if I was going to pick 25 people, it would not have been them. But they honestly did an amazing job. And as such, we knew that we had to grow the program. So again, we reached out, we collaborated, we worked with what was then Resource, now Avivo, who brought us the expertise on mental health care. So these days in my program, instead of driving up and down streets to find landlords, we're lucky to have partners with dozens of different building complexes where we're able to offer people not just basic housing, but often brand new apartments, sometimes with balconies and washers and dryers. Our learnings included things that people will succeed more if their surroundings are clean and bright and new. We learned that housing first makes sense because we can't know in advance who will succeed and who won't. Humans are ever evolving, and a transition of this size might push people to strive harder and reach out their potential, or that might scare them into a fall. But we just never know. So the other big legacy of the Shelter Providers Action Association was the organizing of that first march. It was 30 years ago, roughly, and it was a bitter, bitter, cold, dark night. I think some of you might remember it. And my son, Isaac, was a baby. So he was not pleased to hear that we did not actually make it to the end of the route that night because it was too cold, and we circled back around. But like many of you, every year, he and I, our family, hold this night as a sacred ritual. The ritual of walking together through the city, carrying names, some we were close to, marching silently, allowing for reflection, but also drawing attention to their lives and our loss. Looking ahead, it's hard to not worry, knowing what we have in front of us maybe the next 4 years. But we're going to need to work hard and be alert, look out for those in our community who are trans or queer, immigrants, or people living, of course, in homelessness or poverty. But we've been through this before, and despite that it being hard, we know what it will be asked of us. To close, I want to share a poem that my dad, my 90-year-old dad, reads every morning as his morning prayer, and it's called The Wild Geese by Wendell Berry. I think this holds some truth for us going forward. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp sweet of summer's end. In time's maze over fall fields, we name names that went west from here, names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon as in love or sleep holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. Thank you.
Thomas Henderson, Brendan, Jolene Marlia Shepard, JoJo, Bonnie Lisa Schultz, Dennis Lawrence Denny Kehoe, John Manifield, Troy Donovan Wimmer, Tyrone Joseph Moore T-Bone, Marquise Jean Top Flight Washington, Olivia Nicole Jacobson.
Robert James Bubba Burkettvet, Mikhail Deshawn Patton, Jennifer Lynn Graham, Matthew James Sletton, Anthony Dwayne McRae, Sleepy, Kurt Robert Kalaji, Todd Christopher Goley, Reed Christopher Johnson, Sherwa M. Mohammed, Bruno Peter Treligi,
Jaden Timothy Watson, Juanita Marie Burrell, Justin Robert Nelson, Jacob Winton Rains, Herman Lee Jackson Jr., Roger Lloyd Pops Larson Jr., Shantaka Latoya Cole, Katie Lynn Westrom, Rebecca Ray Becca Big Bear, Brandon Lee Cloud Bucko Man,
Idris Sharif Mohammed Ali, Nicholas Tyler Trammell, William Bill Gilbertson, excuse me, Omar Gutierrez Dominguez, Jacoby Monteris Prince Mack, Angela Marie Woodward, Troy Ellen Troy Boy Hero, George Troy Edwards, Pamela Ann Keeler, Roderick Nathaniel King,
Ronald Wayne Latham Jr., Kelvin Brian Scroggins, Caressa Rosebird Horse High Eagle, Robert Lee Giles, Stacy Mae Booth, Alicia Camille Quartz, Devon Wesley Levi, Teresa Lynn Maxwell, Daniel Paul Johnson, Jason Christopher Schroeder,
Rebecca Ann Miller, Jacob Samuel Sellers, Sheila Ann Wallen, William Brett Bill Grossman, Abdi Rizik Muhammad Abader, Unknown Woman, Scott Raymond Stewart, Victor Ortega, Marine Ami Gan, Corey Michael Schultz,
Jesse Paul Cloud, Santia Lee Zamora, Timothy Michael Green, Dylan Gerald Harmston, Ryan Lottie, Sally Minnie Wounded Eye, Leon Edward Lasley, Kelly Marie Mays, Dennis John Holmquist, Jacob Robert Jake Johnson,
Robert James Bob Deck, Tyrese Jefferson, Mohammed Mustaf Mohammed, Benjamin Simon Ben Chapman, Heather Jernigan, Bradley Justin Christensen, Jeffrey Michael Newberry, Dorothy Mae Smith, Cedric Maurice Wilson,
Joseph Scott Johnson, Deshaun J.C. Porter, D'Andrea Deanna Hamlin, Solomon Habakkuk Hamilton, Nakia Ray Lebat, Daniel Jacob Elijah, Pamela Jean Sarsland, Genevieve Lynn Jenny Connors, Tyler Jordan Sargent, Baby Boy,
Charles Blaine William Corbin, Fernando Brisano, Roland Scott Little Owl Goodwin, James Matthew Butler, Angela Ann Ostwald, Jacqueline Georgette Peterson, Cody Lynn Dainter, Devin Brody Hagland, Timothy Morris, Joseph Charles Vermillion,
Devin Leonard Twin Caston, Ching Kong Yang, Larry Darnell Brown, John Raymond Rankin, Alan Sam, Gerald Jerry Jenkins, Samantha Jean Sam Gillis, Noli Ye Ahmed Youssef, Kimberly Harris, Melissa Anastasia, Lisa Hicks.
Matthew Mateo, Fontaine Dwight Taylor, Martin Eric Love, Brandon Lee Jones, Lucky Red ATL, Clarissa April Folson, Linda Lundquist, Janice Marcia Jan Koliznik,
Ronald Edwin Ron Harms, Jacob J. Johnson, Marco Bull Morwell, Anthony Robert Dabbs Rojas, Kelly Wounded Foot, Milton Lee Burks, Douglas Lee Strand, James H., Chris Nelson, Debbie Ann Lewis Powell,
Suzette L. Susie Anderson, Manuel Manny Loya Lopez, Shane Anthony Thompson, Robert Eugene Bob Bennett Jr., Louis Jorges, Leslie Ann Payne, Dwayne Hanson, Theodore Allen Ted Davy, Xavier Martin Funk,
Nicole Ray Blanchard, Tracy Ann Nagurski, Henry Jones, Zain Rashid, John L. Rantala, Gregory Mark Bowles, Christopher Bakke, Michael Good, Marvin Dale Howard Jr., Mark Robert Morley,
Chaz David Abrahamson, Manuel Morales Rodriguez, David T., David Lee Tomlinson, Mike Murray, Marcos Morales, Teresa Jones, Tammy Carol Chandler, Glenda Louise Ramsey Mercedes, Fabian Clyde Jones, Chops.
Felicia Gill, Mark James Hegler, Henry W., Carl Bam Bam DePaul, Robert G., Brenda Clinton, Daniel Hugh Minter, David R.V. Dave Peterson, Chantel Rochelle Moose, Pamela Sue Mata,
Larry Johnson, Rebecca Lynn Brousseau, Joey Marshall Williams, Miguel Angel Taco Haya, Beverly K. Williams, Sansi Marie Udovic, Jose Luis Kiko Sakik Marin, Anita Anderson, Yvonne Noel Dossier Johnson, Jim Bryant, J.J. Gibson,
Osman Saeed Jamali, Wesley Warren Wes Winkleman, Joseph Thomas Farron, Angela Wells, Stephen Anderson, Derek Wayne Chance Burkhalter Jr., Howard Hunter, Raymond Ray Mortensen, Roger Jeffers, Ronnie L. Green,
Hunter Morrison, Terrence T-Bone Moen, Ryan Leith taken alive, Keith Irwin Petty III, Benedicto Quiseda Corrales, Victoria Eileen Harwell, Christina K. Ramirez, Philip Earl Lydia, Jabron Garen Hole, Michael W. Norcross,
Dharma Lucier Little, Danny Grow, Carson Caleb Smith, Daniel Tyrell Clark, Mark Pizarro, Donna Christine Locke E.A. Ampirum, Elizabeth Renee Norcross Yoda, Ronald Eugene Carter, Jill Wayne Thunder, James Michael Jim Anderson,
James Simon Ogris, George Jake Jacobs Jr., Linda Schutte, Jody Hartling, Samuel Michael Unvanovich, Mikey or Shorty, Louis Mitchell Lemons Jr., Cassandra Joanne Cassie McCuskey, Jania Marie Crowd, David Matthew Glazner, Samantha Joe or Sam Moss,
Dana Leslie Wake 'em Up Great Dane, Lester Haynes, Alice Mary Allie Wake 'em Up, Emmanuel Patterson, Dwayne Joe Bergman, Gerald Chauvin, Janet Martinez, Derek William Castro, Harry Butch Smith, Diane Maxine Anderson,
Randy Charles Prince, Tanisha Lay, Chris Einarson, Timur Tim Dubinsky, Cynthia Marie C.C. Taylor, Samuel Dean Henderson, John Kenneth Jones, Richard Graham Losseth Jr., Breeze Serini Vasa Kuzman,
Uvetta Austin, Leonard Mormon, Darius Anthony Wade, Bill Hockenberger, David Warren Spike, Helen Gorosky, Sam Butler Jr., Terry Michael Schneider, Portia Johnson, Lois Camille Wolf,
Douglas B. Doug Malcho, Kathleen Ann Kathy O'Day, Reverend Dennis Ogisby Jr., James Darrell Jim Anderson, Jason Lee Wiegman, Terrell Ellen Cousino, David Schindeldecker, Larry Herkey, Ann Flukiger, Lindsay Sue Smith, I'm sorry.
Vannie Hayden, Reverend Sean Phillips, Reverend Greg Garmer,
Chris Spang, Merrill A. Chris.
So we're going to move into a time of sharing remembrances of folks that have died over the last year. Of course, we know we have many folks to remember, and we don't have all the time in the world, so we do have to limit our time to 2 minutes per person. So I will have somebody keeping time And when we get to that 2-minute mark, I'll just give you a gentle nudge and ask you to wrap up your stories. Since we know that we don't have enough time to share all that we want to tonight, there's going to be a few ways for folks to share if you don't get a chance to speak at this time. So one, there are index cards and pens at the end of each pew, and you're welcome to write a remembrance and place it in a basket as you leave tonight, and those will be archived with the Simpson Archives. The other option will be that there will be a microphone downstairs during the community meal, so there will be a chance for folks to share remembrances there. And then there's also a QR code on the back of your program, so you can share a written remembrance that way via the QR code. So I welcome anybody who'd like to share to come up and take the microphone. If for some reason you're not able to come up, I can bring it to you, just raise your hand. So I invite folks to come forward.
Hi, I'm Casey. One person to remember, there's many stories, and there might be more, but Rebecca Ann Miller, also known as Roxy, she one time called 911 trying to find me and was successful. I was like, I think some officer had found my number, and it was like the community officer, and they were like, hey, weird question. And I was like, you found me. So it was pretty funny. She was a character. And then another person, there's a lot of people on the list, but Samuel, Mikey, Shorty, Ivanovich, I was going to Viva Village, and there was some people popping up there, and they were like, hey, I know you. And I was like, how do you know me? And they were like, oh, this guy told me he was gonna marry you. And I was like, oh, okay. And he'd never told me that, but it was, yeah. And he was never someone, he was pretty to his own. And so it was really Sam said that to me? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. But I didn't see him before he died, but yeah, rest in peace. Oh.
All right, I had the honor of working with Janet Martinez. She was one of the funniest ladies that I got to work with, and she used to pretend like I was her boyfriend, which if you can't tell, I definitely wouldn't be her boyfriend, but yeah, she insisted. So whenever somebody that she knew came around, she'd always be like, oh, this is my boyfriend. I'm like, sure, whatever. But she actually lost her husband, Sergio, last year. And so, I'm sad, very sad that she's gone, but I'm happy to know that they're together again. So.
Hi, I want to remember Sharice Moore, who worked at 66 West, who had been homeless off and on herself, and was an advocate for youth and different people in the community that were homeless. Sharice passed away this year in March.
I am here on behalf of a woman named Samantha, and pretty fresh. So I just wanted you to maybe just think of Samantha for just 1 second, and just with gentleness and softness, please.
Hey, I've got 3 people to remember tonight. and one of them I just learned about in the bulletin, so that's a little hard. Cece is somebody I met when volunteering at the Lamoureux, bringing food with my family on Sunday afternoons. And she was really special because she took a super interest in my youngest and my middle kids. She came down every day on Sundays with candy or a popsicle during the summers. And she would be really interested in stuff that she could make soup with. So they would give her the ingredients for her soup, and she would give them a popsicle or some other kind of candy. And Randy also lived at the Lamoureux and was formerly homeless. And he had his little dog, Cosmo, and he would greet us when we would come, and we would pet Cosmo. And the last time we saw Randy, he gave Sebastian a little Hot Wheels car. And he always wanted banana bread or pumpkin bread. So whenever he wasn't there to give it to, we would always leave it with the security desk and just tell him that that was for Randy. And he was always super talkative and loved when we would come by. And I met Philip when I was at Simpson's shelter. And one day I ran into him at the Lamoureux, and I didn't realize until today that he was gone. And Philip was amazing and took an interest in my oldest, who's 15. And we would be always interested in, he always wanted to know how fast his recent race was. So that was Philip.
I'm Melissa from Central, and I have to say this year, most of my folks are on the formerly homeless list, which thank you to all of you in this room who make that part happen, because it's really important. Yeah, Mikey. I got Mikey's community card in my back pocket because John stole it off one of the shelter's bulletin boards this week and brought it to me this morning. So if you're looking for Mikey's community card, I've got it. If his sister's in the room, you can have it. He was just hilarious and the kindest, most polite guy you ever met. I'm so sorry, Pastor. I don't mean to bother you, but do you maybe have a bus card? Mikey, yeah, I got a bus card for you. Come on, come on. And Mikey lived a hard life and was in a lot of pain. We found out through toxicology that he actually died of a heart condition. That was what the pain was he was feeling. It wasn't the burn, and it wasn't sepsis like we thought. So God rest in peace, Mikey. Angelo Wells had the most beautiful voice you've ever heard. He sang on Monday for worship, and we just miss him so much. Mercedes was a tough broad. I mean, in all those ways, right? Deeply loving of her native roots and deeply loving of Stanley the dog. So if you ever met Stanley, you met the most important person in Mercedes' life, which was a dog. God, there's so many this year, right? Lois Wolf folded and measured all the sheets in the free store, all of them, when we haven't found anyone to replace her yet. So if you want to work in the free store on Mondays and want to fold sheets and measure them, please. David Schindlecker was our produce specialist, and he made sure that the kitchen was doing the right things and feeding folks when they were. Daniel Clark, I have a million stories. Who doesn't have a million stories of Daniel Clark? But my favorite was the time where we sent him to community organizing training, and I knocked on the door and said, hey, we need to be out of the hotel room already. Daniel, what are you doing? And he was having a party. I was like, thanks, Daniel. So that's where I'll leave it. The rest I'll put in the basket.
I am fortunate enough to have done a fair amount of photography work for Simpson over the past many number of years, and I occasionally get to go into shelters. And this past spring, I photographed a gentleman named Carl Donald Jr., and he said he had never had his portrait taken before professionally, and So I submitted the photos back to Simpson. They were using them in their newsletters, et cetera, and shortly thereafter, they informed me that he had passed away, and that they were using his portrait for his funeral, and that really meant a lot to me. And I just hope that I was able to create a dignified portrait of the man, and that his family has a nice photo of him for memory.
Can I time myself? I don't know. Jabron Hull, so he was such a community activist. He actually was killed when he was back handing out pizza to folks who were still homeless after he had been housed. And when there was a separate incident prior to him being housed, there was a hate crime incident on Lake Street in 2023. He went on foot of his own accord, out of the kindness of his heart, and essentially tried to educate folks and tried to break it up and create a more inclusive Lake Street. Everyone looked up to him. And then there was a time as well when I was gonna come pick him up, take him somewhere, and he asked me to come to the other side of the street. And I said, you know, you're gonna have to give me a minute. I'm stuck in the snow. I literally can't. And he came running out with a shovel without me asking, without me noticing at first, and actually just started digging me out. And I was like, whoa, 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 it's okay. But that's just kind of the person that he was. So, yeah.
I got a lot of names this year and like a lot of great stories. I'm not gonna share those downstairs. Scott Stewart comes to mind. I remember one time being on outreach and my coworker texted me, Sam, you need to get back to the office. He showed up with a bag and he said, the cat's out of the bag. And my coworker looks at him, he's like, what? Well, I guess it's out. Opens up the bag and there's a cat in the bag. Michael Nybeck, another one. One of his beliefs was he wanted to be the fourth horseman of the apocalypse, and he told me, Sam, I'm gonna kill you one day, it's nothing personal, it's just what I gotta do. And I was like, all right, at least we're on that level, straight up. Like, Danny Groh, he had a lot going on, and every condition you could think of, but he was blind, and he liked to listen to Anthrax when we'd go on rides, and I'm pretty sure he made up doctor's appointments just so he could go out and get out of the building and listen to like thrash metal with me and hang out. There were just so many names. I think of just so many, and I don't know. It keeps getting longer, and I do see the names of the formerly housed getting longer too, which is beautiful. And just thank you for all that you do, each one of you, and thank you for being here continually, and I love y'all.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to remember a few folks as well. It's so great that so many folks were in housing. Some of the folks that are on this list are folks that I've known for so long, and for the fact that they were in housing at the end really does mean something. I'm going to tell a couple of stories that maybe don't tell other people about, but Jose Luis Saquic Marin, Kiko, he was a guy who he'd come here from Guatemala, and he'd been in and out of our shelter and in encampments, and just a wild guy, wild in the streets. And there was Catholic Charities had their big Endeavors project that was leasing up a couple of years ago, and they had to be at a certain amount of occupancy by the end of December. And so we were working together, getting a ton of folks in. And I remember at the last minute, they were like, we need one more guy, we need one more guy. And like, Kiko wasn't even staying at the shelter. He just rang the doorbell, asked for some socks or something. We're like, Kiko, you want an apartment? Come on. And he was just like, like Mary alluded to, one of those guys where you're like 99 times out of 100, you thought he wasn't going to stick, and he lived there for 2 years until he died in an auto accident. Martin Eric Love is a guy that I've known for so long. He had us come to his wedding down at the courthouse when he got married. This was more than 10 years ago. He was at the very last lottery. I've got pictures of him when we used to do the shelter lottery. We used to draw bingo balls, and we made a big bingo ball for the last lottery, and he smashed it. Yeah, to symbolize that we were done with that. Jim Anderson. Where's Rick in this room? Is Rick Coy in here? Oh, there we are, right in front of me. Jim's a good buddy of Rick's and a longtime friend of ours. And he was in his own place, God, it's got to be 5 or 6 years after 20 years of homelessness. The very first night that he moved in, it was like a Monday night, and the Vikings were playing Monday Night Football, and so I helped him move, and then he was just kind of like, Robert, what if we just got a pizza and watch Monday Night Football? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll buy a pizza. Sorry, I'm not really supposed to do that, but. And I remember, yeah, like a 2-liter of Coke and a pizza with Jim in his apartment, and it gives me a little peace now to know that when he passed earlier this year, that the Vikings were 5-0 at that point. So as far as he knows, the Vikings had an undefeated season this year. And yeah, just so many others.
Thank you, everyone, for giving humanity to all of the names on this list, and in particular to our former shelter manager, Robert Hoffman, who no longer will be with Simpson after this. Reverend Davis has pointed out to me a couple of names that didn't get read, and there's such power in the reading of the names that I wanted to call these out briefly. Gregory Korth, Christopher Junkin, and David Tomlinson. So once again, thank you all.
Hi, I work as a nurse, so I'll try not to do any HIPAA violations, but I want to say the name Jake Johnson. You taught us how to bring so much care out into the community. You once said that you wanted to be someone that your grandma would be proud of. You are kind, you are courageous. I'm sorry that you died alone. I would have loved to have been there to hold your hand. Joe Vermillion, you told me that I hug like a mom, and your feet really smell bad. Roxy, Rebecca, Ann, Miller, Schneider, Schrader, Colfax, Dunlop, age 32 to 58, you showed us just how many COVID-19 vaccines one human body could absorb. You taught so many people how to reverse overdoses, and I'm sorry that we weren't there for you that night. And Devin Twin Caston, you would convince anyone to take you to McDonald's to get a fudge caramel sundae. You knew which McDonald's to go to where you could get both the fudge and the caramel. And that day that you were like, hey, can I get 2? And I was like, yeah. And then after I paid and we got in the line, you handed that one back to me and said, I got one for you. You have shown so many people how to care, and I just want you to know you're loved.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these memories. We know that we'll hold these memories and more with us as we go into the ending of our service. And please do take the time to write memories down if you didn't get a chance to, and share some memories downstairs. Thank you.
As we are making our way through our agenda here, my next function is to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan.
I have a proclamation here that I'm going to read in a moment. But I just wanted to take a moment to just say thank you to everyone who marched, to everyone who does this work day in and day out, for all the people who come into the sanctuary and pray for their neighbor. I don't know what the future will hold, but I know that when we come together and we celebrate those that we have lost, when we speak their names, when we tell hilarious stories, that is how we build community and push back on the divisiveness that is headed our way. Some of us come into this space as advocates, some of us come into this space as survivors, some of us come into this space with some role or title, and those roles and titles don't really matter. Because as we are moving forward and we're moving forward together, we may be called on to do policy work and to create change, or protect the things that we have done in partnership together. And I too am grateful that that list of our relatives who we've lost who have been formerly homeless is growing longer. But I also look forward to the day when we no longer have to be here. That day may take a little bit longer to arrive than we had hoped, but our role may also be to put our bodies on the line, to link arms and stand shoulder to shoulder, protect those who cannot protect themselves. It may mean mutual aid. It may mean simply feeding people. And we are called to do all of that in this moment, myself included. So my occupation doesn't matter, but my vocation and your vocation is what matters in this moment. And so please lean into your vocation. And whatever it is that you lose track of time doing, that is your gift to share in this moment, and it is needed now more than ever before. I also turned 45 in September and can no longer see. And the print on these proclamations is quite small. So, whereas we recognize all people facing homelessness as deserving as dignity and safety, and whereas even one person facing homelessness is one too many, and whereas it is our collective responsibility to transform and repair systems that have caused and perpetuate housing instability, and whereas Minnesota has profound gratitude for the people and organizations who connect those experiencing or at risk of homelessness to quality, affordable, stable housing, and whereas for 40 years, Simpson Housing Services has partnered with communities to host the Minnesota Homeless Memorial March and Service, which honors the memories of people in Minnesota who have lost their lives while facing homelessness. And whereas Minnesota is committed to working with communities across the state to create access to housing, racial, and health justice for all people facing homelessness. Now, therefore, I, Tim Walz, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim Thursday, December 12th, 2024, as Minnesota Homeless Memorial Day in the state of Minnesota. Chimigwech for all you have done, and Chimigwech for all that we will do to protect each other and keep each other safe as we move forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I have always said about this work that I find it tremendously humbling. And tonight, when earlier this evening, when a representative of the media was asking me about the 40th anniversary of this gathering, what I was humbled by was all of you. The fact that we have a community, that we are part of a community that wants to come out and do this important work of remembrance and lifting up of names and telling stories and remembering and saying that this is not how we think it should be. And I'm humbled to be here with you tonight doing this. So thank you again for all of you for being here. And of course, thank you to our hosts. Thank you for everyone who's been involved in making this all of this heavy lifting of the work to make this come together tonight. Before I introduce our closing music, I want to remind you that we are honored we invite you to join us in the lower level for a full-on turkey dinner put on by our friends from Minnetonka United Methodist Church. So please join us if you're able to come downstairs for that, which will be immediately following the service. And with that, I would like to introduce the White Elk Singers.